Hey everybody, welcome back to This Woman Can. I am your host, Janice Sutherland, career strategist for women of colour over 40. Now, as much as I purport to know everything, or I believe I know everything, I do acknowledge that there's some gaps in my knowledge. And the one thing I want to do now with This Woman Can is, apart from bringing you fantastic interviews, is actually start giving you some more knowledge, some more insight in how you can create the career you want past over 40 and beyond. So today we're going to talk about personal branding, because it's probably something you've heard bandied about and you're not quite sure, well, what is all this about? What is branding? Isn't that what I see on the bottle of ketchup or, in the supermarket? But personal branding is really becoming really, really important now, especially as you're looking to change careers or advance in your careers. So I have brought an expert in. I have brought somebody who knows more about this topic than I do. My guest this week is Rebecca Allen. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Janice. How are you?
I am fabulous, tip-top and Bristol fashion, as they say, as the English would say, shall I say. Rebecca, however, as much as you may hear a tinge of English accent, you may ever hear a tinge of Australian accent because she's in Australia. So our worlds have collided, or we're oceans apart, but the knowledge we're going to share today is universal.
Absolutely. So thanks Rebecca, so much for having me on, Janice.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I think my first question then is, what exactly is personal branding?
It's a very, very good question, and it's something I get asked a lot. So how I look at personal branding is essentially it's about tapping into your authenticity. Okay. And I think authenticity is one of those words also that gets really overused and talked about, and nobody really actually has a clue what it means.
Yeah.
But essentially how I look at it is I see personal branding as a promise, and I see it as a promise not just to yourself, but also to the people around you. Okay. So what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, if you look at it like this, if you get to understand who you are, which is your authenticity, what drives you, how you want to show up, what behaviors you really want to demonstrate to those key stakeholders around you. That is you creating this promise to yourself as to, this is how I want to do business. This is how I want to show up. I want to do this authentically. I want to feel like I'm in alignment with myself. So there's none of those kind of conflicts where you feel uncomfortable. Yeah. You just feel like you're in flow, and you just feel like you're doing things that appeal to your strengths and that kind of give you your best opportunity to shine.
Yeah.
But I also see it as this promise to the external world too. And that comes from building that kind of consistency around how you behave, a consistency about how you do business with people, how you conduct yourself, how you engage people, how you encourage people around you, for example. And like I say, it's a kind of a two-sided promise, but it all comes down to you just being your authentic self and showing the world what you actually want them to see. Because that's the thing, we spend our lives hoping that people are seeing us as we want them to.
Yeah.
So often our intention is not matched with that perception.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work around making sure that those two things are aligned, that intention and perception.
I love that description. I love that answer. But my question, what came to mind when you said that about authenticity, and I guess we spend a lot of time working on authenticity, but a lot of women, especially in the corporate world, and especially women of a certain age, Gen Xers, maybe some late baby boomers. I'm talking from my experience that we were almost told we had to portray a certain way, a certain self, in order to get ahead. And that didn't involve anything about authenticity. You had to look a certain way, act a certain way, speak a certain way, maybe, especially if you bring ethnicity into it as well. Yeah. So it's different. So why, okay, probably two questions there. Why has branding become so important now? And for a woman who has kind of had that drilled into her, that's what you should be. How do you now go about creating your personal brand?
Okay, so I think the reason why it's come up now, I mean, it's been around forever, obviously, but it's really come to the fore in the last sort of 5 years or so, 10 years. And I think the reason is we're sort of fed up with that stereotype of how we're supposed to do business in a corporate setting. Businesses originally were set up by men. That's the reality, mostly white men, right? And businesses were set up hundreds of years ago, 50 years ago, even by men. And so the way of doing business was this very masculine energy. You have to do this, you have to do this. This is the way we do it. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we've all kind of realized that there are different ways of doing it. And actually, that's possibly not the best way of doing things. And I think we're all a bit over that. And I think, there's all this kind of, awareness now around diversity and awareness around that diversity of thought and how valuable that is. So there's a desperate need in business now to have more women and more diversity and ethnicity also in our conversation, so that we arrive at better decision making for, businesses.
Yeah.
So I think that's the reason why the timing is so astute. And I think, to your point, I have also read the mountain of books that are out there, because I do my research, Janice, I really do. I have read the mountain of books out there that basically are telling women to just behave more like men, please.
Yeah.
Can you please just do this? Women who get ahead in the office. There are loads of these books around there that are shaming women into, be more assertive, be aggressive if you need to be, stand up tall, be more sort of vocal, and all these kinds of very masculine pieces of advice that I think is nonsense, personally. But there was a swathe. It was like the beginning of the kind of feminist movement, if you like, from this perspective. There was a swathe of these books that came out telling women to be more like men.
Yeah.
And now that's dampened down, I think, from, the stuff that I read now, and certainly the stuff that I teach, where it's not about that at all. It's about finding a middle ground somewhere where you're operating, yes, still often in male-dominated spaces, and we have to be aware of that. But it's also really, really important to find your own voice and your own energy and your own positioning in that space, because when you do that, you really do shine. Like, we can get rid of those big shoulder pads.
Oh, I remember them so well.
Anymore, And the thing that I really love, Janice, actually, as I've gone through this with so many women now, this process, is what's really, really exciting for me is you really start to see just how powerful that feminine energy actually is.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be aggressive.
Yeah.
It really doesn't, but it doesn't require you to kind of come into your own self and to get a little bit courageous, a little bit scared, because it is a bit scary to be really authentic and a bit vulnerable, but just say, look, how do I really want to do this? And then going out there in the real world and doing that and behaving in that way. And it's amazing the results that gets. It's amazing the reception that you get from that. And that just gives you the confidence to continue to sort of show up in your own energy, in your own light.
Yeah. Yeah. So the second part of my question, I suppose. So, I'm quite lucky. I disbanded my shoulder pads, and my double-breasted women's trouser pantsuits, because I remember it all very well. Those
awful shoes, those really yucky shoes. Yeah,
all very well.
I hear you.
But I'm putting myself as a woman who's been in the corporate world for a long, long time. Conformed to everything she was told to do to get ahead. Yes, she's yearning for something different. She knows that. She feels that it's not right, but she doesn't know how to show her authentic self, and it was much of saying these books are saying, be aggressive, be assertive, be this. I don't know how to do that. I don't, that's kind of been lost in me. And I've been so used to conforming, for want of a better word. How do I now break out, blossom, emerge, butterfly, break free to be my authentic self, to start owning my brand?
Okay, so this is such a good question, Janice, because the reality is like we were saying earlier, we've been taught that there's one way of doing corporate life. Yeah. There's this one way, which is nonsense. It's like saying there's only one way to cut a cake, or there's only one handbag you can ever wear. It's nonsense, right? We've got choice. There's always choice. So, I mean, personally, I would cut the cake, so I got the biggest slice, but, there you go. But the thing is I think what we forget as women, and I do think it's something that is particular to women, is that we forget where we're already very strong. So we might not have this natural strength in this area of assertiveness or whatever it is, but we do other things extraordinarily well.
Yeah.
Possibly, dare I say it, better than men. Right?
You can say it.
This is the thing that's so funny, right? We all have natural strengths, but something that women do extraordinarily well, for example, is analysis. We're very good. We're kind of wired slightly differently in our brains, and we're very, very good at assessing risk and looking at all the different options and weighing up the ups and the downs, the pros and the cons, getting people to involve themselves and getting different opinions. We're not scared to do that. A lot of men are very uncomfortable doing that because they feel like they need to know the answer. I have to be sure, it has to be unilateral. And actually, that is a phenomenal strength that women have. And we forget that we have our own armory of tools that are very unique to women. And I mean, obviously men can do this as well. I'm just saying that women do it very well, naturally, generally. And we need to tap into what we do well. So rather than saying it has to be this way or the highway, we have to just say, okay, look, what do I do really well? What do I honestly own? What can I actually bring to the party here that is authentic to me, that is going to give me this opportunity to shine, and, you know, that is going to get me to the outcome just a different way. And I think that's the thing we forget. We don't have to just go down with this one route, even though there's lots of people saying this is the way to do it. We can still do it our own way and still get to the same outcome. It's just a different path to get there.
Nice. Okay. I hear you. I hear you on that. So here's me. I'm saying me, the mythical me. Coming out of the world now, looking to transfer careers, move careers, want to move ahead. What are some of the tips you could share for a woman who's, okay, I want to move forward my career now. I really didn't really think about my brand, or maybe something just happened. It was just there. But how do I bring my brand to the front? How do I get myself noticed? For want of a better phrase.
Yeah. And the noticed bit is a really massive one for women. That noticed, being known, being recognized. Because one thing I do see that we kind of fall into this trap, we kind of work very, very hard and expect that that's going to result in recognition. And I see that time and time again in my business. I'm sure you do in yours as well, Janice, but like, that is just such a fundamental thing that it's sort of a pattern that we've got into as women, working very hard at school, working our butts off and expecting that's going to result in the A grade or the recognition. So it just doesn't work like that in the corporate world. So we do have to be more proactive, and we do have to present ourselves in a particular way to create that perception that we want people to see of us. It's exactly what I was talking about at the beginning. So it is about being more purposeful. I think the first answer to that question is it's about being more proactive and being more purposeful about creating that perception that you want people to have. So I would suggest getting a piece of paper, and I would suggest writing down some keywords that you want your key decision makers to think of you collectively. So is it that you're innovative? Is it that you're a massive team player? Is it that you're, you're somebody who grows the business? Whatever it is, you have to think about what these positioning statements are that can honestly change the way that you behave, and also how you're perceived as a result of that. So first and foremost, it's about being purposeful. And secondly, I think it's about being quite bold and asking yourself what it is you actually want. What do I actually want from this career? Like, what's the point of this whole thing? Do I actually want to stay in this role for another 5 years or not? Do I want other opportunities? And career kind of strategy and personal brand strategy go absolutely hand in hand, because if you want to move up the ladder, you have to know what you want. You have to be intentional about that, but you also have to present in a way that shows you're already capable enough to do the job and competent enough to do the job. And that, people like you and people trust you and all those sorts of things. It's a great answer. So that's from a corporate angle. I'm going to twist it a little bit, just like I do. So that's from the corporate angle. But now this woman now, she's done a career. She's done what she wants to do now. She wants to set out on her own. She wants to have her own business or, sort out. So how would she take what she's learned, or how would she use that to help create her brand? Or how would she create her brand? How would you create it? Well, the thing that's kind of interesting, I think, about branding is it's a forever evolving piece. So in our business, what we do is we help clients actually build what we call a personal brand architecture, which is essentially you designing your brand. This is what it's all about. This is how it interacts, etc. And it's a really, really interesting exploration that people go through because they've never thought about this stuff often before. But you can, reinvent that whole concept every couple of years if you want to. And I always say to clients to go back to that personal brand architecture that we designed together. It's like a one-page document in the end. And see if it still holds true, because of course you grow and you evolve and your decisions kind of have changed in a couple of years. And you might decide that some of the key kind of elements of the brand need to change. It might be some behaviors that need to change. It might be some aspirations that need to change, whatever it is. But I think, it doesn't matter when you decide to look at branding, it's always relevant.
Right.
It's always possible to start from the beginning. It's always possible to evolve it, to change it, because you're changing all the time too.
Yeah.
So I think you can take all of the past experiences. And I think in some respects, what I've seen, because I work also with a lot of women in their 40s and women in their 30s. And what I see is it's kind of almost easier in your 40s to do it because you've got more experience.
Right.
And, it's certainly easy to do it in your 30s. It's easy to do it in your 20s. But I think you've got more clarity about what you want and what you don't want.
Yeah.
I think that's the big piece that's different. I think in your 30s, you're kind of very confident about what you want.
Yeah.
You're not so confident about sort of putting those boundaries up and saying, I'm not interested in that anymore. But by 40, you're like, right, I don't want that anymore. That's definitely not how it's going to be. So I think it just gives you a bit more information to play with to get that clarity.
Right.
What your brand's all about.
Right. Okay. Great. So a lot of what I'm hearing is kind of more like, I suppose, probably an internal aspect. And, and there'll be obviously people learn a bit more about my brand by the way I interact with them and stuff like that. So how externally, what kind of tools, or maybe what's the part of social media, or what can I do externally to demonstrate my brand?
Yes. Okay. Well, it's a great question. And the truth is, it's how you behave that actually creates the perception that people have of you. So it's not any intention that you have. It's not, I want to be seen like this. This is kind of a very passive strategy. And I find a lot of women do that kind of strategy and expect it just to somehow radiate, We have to be really purposeful, like I say, about the behaviors that we portray and that we share with people and how we interact with people to create that perception. And I used to work in advertising. That was my corporate background. And the thing that I loved about the advertising piece was the branding bit, in terms of how to establish this brand and how you actually endear a brand to a consumer. Like, how do you actually differentiate, one cough and cold product from another one? And how do you differentiate a bank from another bank? I found that so fascinating. And the reality is in brand theory and consumer brand theory, it's exactly the same as personal brand theory, is you have two aspects. You have the rational side and you have the emotional side.
Right. And
we have to constantly be thinking about the two. So what does that actually mean in real terms when it comes to personal branding? Rational kind of strategy is about helping people see that you're competent, that you can do the job, that you can deliver, that you're capable. Emotional is like, well, actually, do I like this person? And do I like being with this person? Do I feel safe with this person? Is a massive one, something that we don't talk about, but it's a massive subconscious need that we all have when we're with anybody, whether it's a partner or whether it's a friend or whether it's a colleague or a boss. We want to actually feel safe. And branding, when you do it effectively with personal branding, that's when, when you see the best leaders out there, they make people feel safe to share, to express themselves, to be honest in the group, to collaborate. And that's a massive skill as a leader, to make people feel safe. So like I say, it's constantly about working on this balance between demonstrating the rational side, that you're competent, and demonstrating this emotional side, that you connect with people, you care about people, and that you make them feel good about themselves.
Fabulous. Now, that's been a great explanation. So just as an example, because this is probably my last question on personal branding. For anybody who's listening, for anyone that's listening, thinking, well, I'm still a little bit confused to what personal branding. How do I know, what my personal brand looks like? Are there any women out there that come to mind, or examples of a strong personal brand, or having a stellar personal brand?
Okay, well, I'll think of like obvious celebrities, because that's kind of the easy way. I mean, I would say Oprah has a very strong personal brand. I mean, we all know Oprah. We all know what she stands for. She's a great example of it. She's, she comes across in a very professional way all the time. She's somebody who endears people. She's certainly competent. She's kind of working all the time on creating a perception that she wants you to have of her. And she's a master at it. So I would say Oprah is a great example. Another person who's probably, working on that is Catherine, who's going to be the future queen of the UK.
Oh, right.
I would say her, because she's very, very kind of covered in people trying to work on her brand. So she's surrounded by, like Oprah is, but they're surrounded by people orchestrating this brand, if you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just thought of somebody in your own world, it could be a friend of yours, it could be a family member, it could be somebody who, you just really respect. What I would suggest you do is have a look at what they do. What are they doing to present themselves in this way? How are they building trust with people? What is it they do? Look at the behaviors. It's the behaviors that matter.
Yeah.
So that's what I suggest, is just looking at somebody and modeling behavior and seeing what it is you think that they're doing, that, like you might have had a really great mentor, a really great leader.
Yeah.
And just think about what they did. It might be really subtle. It doesn't have to be. And I think that the thing that's interesting about branding is you don't have to do massive changes.
Right.
To have doing things to make a big impact.
Yeah.
So that's what I would suggest, is to look at somebody who you respect. Not somebody you don't respect. And just have a look at what they're doing.
Yeah, fabulous. So, and my last question, because I lied.
It's all right, we could go.
You gave a couple of tips already, but I suppose just give one core tip for anybody starting to think about their personal brand. What's the first thing, or one core tip you can share?
I think the fundamental piece, and you and I have talked about this before, is when we're talking about authenticity and being authentic and really tapping into who you are, the best place to start is always your values.
Right. Yeah.
And values is where it's at. And people talk about values all day long again, but it's because it's true, right?
Yeah.
You have to really understand our values. And behind every sort of value, there's some sort of emotional need too that's there for you. It's like you need something, you need this thing. And that's too complicated a subject to go into now. But I would start always with values, because you do need your values to be recognized and to feel aligned and to feel like they're getting, I always say, the airtime they want. Think of them like news time readers on the TV. They need that kind of time to have the airtime that they need. So if something like, I don't know, if recognition is an important value of yours, you have to stay true to that. It's such a massive value for so many women. And so many women feel unrecognized. So that is an example of the value being compromised.
Yeah.
So you've got to ask yourself, okay, if I'm feeling unrecognized, what's missing for me? What do I need? Because you're not going to be able to be your strong, authentic self if something huge like recognition is missing for you. You have to be recognized if you need recognition, right? So I would ask yourself, what's really important to me is a great way to find out what your values are.
Right.
What's really important to me, what's missing for me, can also throw up those values. And you can start saying, okay, well, if that's the case, what do I actually fundamentally need? Because before you even go into all of this strategy stuff, branding and career, you need to get yourself met. You need to have your values met.
Yeah.
So that's always my first point, my always starting point with every client and any listener on the phone. I would always urge you to either do it by yourself or get some help from somebody who can help you do it.
Yeah.
Because it's life-changing. Like when I found out, what values were all about, I was like, this sounds a bit wishy-washy. And then I started getting into it and I was like, holy cow, this is such a game changer when you work this stuff out.
Yeah.
And it simplifies things, right? You can suddenly say, okay, I need this because it's on my values list. I don't need this anymore. And it simplifies your decision-making and it helps you make better decisions, I think, for you and for your career.
Fabulous. Now that was my last question. Honestly. But Rebecca, thank you. If anybody wants to know more about what you do or connect or find out more about you, how can they do that?
Sure. Thank you so much, Janice. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Rebecca Allen, career coach. I'm Rebecca Allen, career coach everywhere. So you'll find me. You can also tap into my podcast for Ambitious Career. Or if you're into, resources and tools, then I have the 7 Habits of Female Execs Who Get Promoted, which is basically a smorgasbord of strategies to help you get promoted, to help you build that visibility and get that recognition. And if you want access to that, you just go to rebeccasfreegift.com and you'll get it straight to your inbox.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rebecca. So great insight, great information. I definitely couldn't have regurgitated that myself. So thank you so much for that. And
you're so welcome. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.